Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Salsana Rohmah and my student number is 2519055. In this video, I want to explain about speaking and listening strategies to fulfill the final exam of multimodal listening and speaking. So before I explain about speaking and listening strategies, I want to explain first about speaking and listening itself. So speaking and listening are the foundations of literacy in content areas. Yet explicit instruction in communication and conversation skills rarely occurs after elementary school. Speaking and listening are often the first domains explored by a language learner. Students who are new to English require frequent, purposeful opportunities to develop these skills. With so many demands on our classroom time, it can be challenging to make room for dedicated speaking or listening skills practice. Unfortunately, we can engage learners by embedding meaningful conversational activities in our lessons throughout the school day. Also, speaking and listening refers to the various formal and informal ways oral language is used to convey and receive the meaning. Now, I will explain the main matter of this matter. That is, what are the speaking and listening strategies? Effective speakers and listeners use a wide range of strategies to help them comprehend and construct spoken language. Students need to be explicitly taught how to select and use a wide range of strategies when speaking and listening, and to understand that their use of these strategies will be determined by context, text form, and audience, and their familiarity with these three elements. Some strategies will be more appropriate to use during speaking and listening. Others are more suited to reflection and review. Students need to be able to apply these strategies throughout the speaking and listening process. For example, using the determining importance strategy before speaking to determine how much detail a particular audience will need to understand the message. A listener might use the determining importance strategy prior to listening to determine which information to closely attend to and retain, and after listening for reflecting on the message. The teacher's role is to help students determine which strategies are appropriate for each student. Each student will have a different strategy in speaking and listening, so teachers must be able to direct students to strategies that can make them be able to improve their speaking and listening skills. And the following are main strategies in speaking and listening. First is predicting. Second, self-talk. Third, self-questioning. That is, includes hypothesizing, reasoning, and clarifying. And then visualizing and creating images. And then code switching. Next is determining importance, and then paraphrasing and summarizing. Next, connecting, and then comparing and contrasting, and then inferring, and then synthesizing, and the last is self-monitoring and self-correction. First strategy is predicting. Predicting helps students to activate their prior knowledge of a context or topic, allowing them to combine what they know with the new information. Predictions will be based on a student's familiarity with the topic and context, and how familiar they are with the speaker or audience. We, as teachers, should be able to encourage our students to make personal predictions before and during speaking and listening. For example, a speaker has to predict the type of spoken text that will be appropriate to a particular purpose, audience, and situation. During listening, effective listeners adjust and refine their initial predictions about a speaker's message as they receive information and make new connections. Okay, next, the second strategy is self-talk. Effective speakers and listeners continually use self-talk as a part of their thinking process. Self-talk is the running commentary that goes on inside our heads, usually without any verbalization. Self-talk is how we make sense of our thinking and reflect on our actions. Self-questioning is part of self-talk. The two strategies usually operate together. Using think aloud to verbalize this strategy helps to build students' understanding of the strong links between thinking and actions. By giving voice to their thoughts, teachers are providing students with a specific structure for reflective practice. The third strategy is self-questioning. Self-questioning is an evaluative process that consists in students asking themselves helpful questions before, during, and after learning to check their understanding of the content. And these questions can be used to help them comprehend and make meaning. Often these questions are spontaneous and natural, with one question leading to the next. Questions can relate to content, style, text form, important messages, events, actions, and inferences. They can also relate to predictions, the speaker's intent, or attempts to clarify meaning. Self-questioning is how we clarify our understanding, examine new concepts, reason, analyze, and hypothesize. This strategy helps students improve their learning by helping them focus their attention and interact with the presented information. Helping students to become aware of questions they ask is an important goal for teaching this strategy. Emphasize that asking questions helps students to develop a deeper understanding of what they are talking about or what they are listening to. The fourth strategy is visualizing and creating images. Effective speakers and listeners use all of their senses to continually create mental images. That is when they create a movie in their mind. Creating mental images promotes the use of prior knowledge. It improves the ability to make predictions, draw inferences, interpret information, remember details, and assist with overall comprehension and memory. Images can be visual, auditory, olfactory, kinesthetic, or emotional. It is important to give students the opportunity to share their images and to talk about how creating images helps them to gain a better understanding. Images can be shared orally, through dramas, or as drawings or shootings. The fifth strategy is code switching. Code switching is the term used to describe the process a speaker uses to alternate between one or more languages. It is often assumed that code switching refers only to second language users, but code switching occurs in every language. Code switching is the use of another language or variety of other languages in a conversation to adjust to other roles or situations or because of the presence of other participants. Code switching occurs when the language used changes according to the situation in which the user finds himself. The speakers here change one code to another or they speak from one language to another. Most of us are conversational code switchers in our first language. For instance, a young adult will not use the same words or phrase when speaking to their friends in an informal atmosphere as they would when speaking to a superior. For example, an older teacher, an advisor or supervisor. Next, the sixth strategy is determining importance. Determining importance in speaking and listening includes selecting the appropriate content, text form, and and conventions to suit their intended purpose and audience. It includes selecting which information to retain in short or long-term memory and which information to respond to. Students in the early phases of development have limited ability to determine importance and often include irrelevant details. For example, including too much detail when retelling an event, like he said, then she said, also then I said. And then the seventh strategy is paraphrasing and summarizing. As developing speakers and listeners assume greater control of the determining importance strategy, they become more able to paraphrase and summarize. Paraphrasing is the strategy speakers and listeners use to restate a spoken text in a way that retains the sense of meaning and provides clarification for understanding. Paraphrasing requires a speaker or listener to restate the essence of the original text in a more concise form. Summarizing is important as it helps the listener to be aware of what they are being told. The determining importance strategy allows students to paraphrase and summarize. They can also use predicting and synthesizing strategies. There are many strategies that underpin paraphrasing and summarizing, making it a complex strategy to learn. However, as more and more of spoken texts are presented to students, and the growing range of modes and formats make this strategy as an essential part of speaking and listening. Okay, the next strategy for number 8 is connecting. Effective speakers and listeners will talk about, listen to, and respond to topics they know and care about. This allows them to make strong connections between their prior knowledge and the information they speak about and listen to. The meaning that students obtain from any oral communication is intertwined with the meaning they brought to it. Activating students' prior knowledge before speaking and listening allows them to consider what they already know about the content, format, and conventions to be used. Drawing on the work of Kinney and Zimmerman, connections can be defined as follows. First is text to self connections. It involves students thinking about their own life and connecting their own personal experiences to new information. Text to self connections occur when something that the speaker says reminds the listener of a personal experience. Second is text to text connections. It involves students thinking about oral texts they have previously composed or understood. Text-to-text connection occur when something that the speaker says reminds the listener of a previously listened. And the last is text-to-word connections. It involves students thinking about what they know about the world outside their personal experience, their family, and their community. These connections are often bigger idea connections and link students' understandings to something in the broader world. It is important to help students refine and limit their connections to those that help them to understand and make meaning. Modeling connections to students and discussing them helps students learn how making relevant connections leads to understanding. Next, comparing and contrasting. Making comparisons relates closely to and is an extension of the connecting strategy. As students make connections to their prior knowledge, they also begin to make comparisons with the information they are receiving. When students make comparisons, they begin by asking questions. For example, how is this information different to what I have heard before? How is it different from what I already believe about this issue? Why is their opinion different to mine? Being able to recognize and describe the similarities and differences between ideas is a critical skill for students to learn. The next strategy is inferring. Making inferences is a strategy used by effective speakers and listeners as they take meaning from spoken text. Then, add their own ideas to make inferences. During the process of inferring, students make predictions, draw conclusions, and make judgments to create their own interpretation. Making inferences allows students to move beyond the literal text and to make assumptions about matters that were not actually stated. Inferences can be made by using acoustic, vocal, or lexical information within the text to guess the meaning of unfamiliar language items, or to fill in missing information. For example, a student may be able to infer the meaning of spoken text by the tone and volume of the speaker's voice. Okay, next is synthesizing. When composing and comprehending text, effective speakers and listeners use synthesizing to piece together information from a variety of sources, much like putting a jigsaw together. As students speak and listen, they continually reflect on what they have just said or just heard. This enables them to keep track of their thinking and to maintain the meaning. Students who consciously use this strategy are able to continually monitor their understanding, allowing them to pull together or retell information that they have heard. During the process of synthesis, students may be connecting, comparing, determining importance, posing questions, and creating images. For example, a student may retell what they have heard as a way of synthesizing information. And now, the last strategy: self-monitoring and self-correction. Effective speakers and listeners continually reflect on what they are saying and hearing to confirm their understanding. If understanding breaks down for the speaker or the listener, they use repair strategies to retain or clarify meaning. For example, repeating, recasting, paraphrasing, summarizing, and asking questions. The ability to monitor our own understanding and to be able to make the appropriate corrections if understanding is not present is quite complex and relies on the effective use of the strategies previously discussed. I think it's enough. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.